Guys, quick update and plug for our partners at Maspeth Squash, led by Rob. We're down to our final four in the Maspeth Outdoor Squash Tournament, and no better way to view it than coming down and watch the spectacle in person. And to follow along for results and free live matches, go follow at maspeth.squash. All right, welcome back to the Rowdy Report podcast. Today's guest is having a resurgence of a season this year. Already, even though we're only a couple events in, or one could say it's the year the Dark Knight Rises. Bit of a miss. Too corny, Declan. But but anyway, hard not to know him considering what he's accomplished already in his career. And this summer winning that Commonwealth Gold doubles alongside James Willstrop. Welcome, Declan James. How are you?
I'm great. Thanks a lot for having me. It's a privilege to be here and looking forward to having a good conversation with you.
So, first of all, I saw that your name wasn't in the U.S. Open. Did I get that right?
That's right.
Is there a particular reason why you decided not to play?
Yeah, so just, a mixture of things, really. Obviously, we had a very long summer, not much of a summer training, with having the games there in July and August. And then in September last month, I played 3 tournaments back to back. So I kind of just felt that if I came back for a week and went straight on the road again, I possibly wouldn't be at my best. So wanted to just take October off to do a good training block and get myself in good shape, also coming off the back of a pretty serious injury. Just decided to take that time this month to train, and then I'll be back on tour at the start of November.
When you start the season, even like before the season, do you have everything mapped out for the year? Like, what events you're going to be playing, what events you're not going to be playing, or is it kind of give or take by the month?
In terms of events, yeah, you kind of take it month by month. Of course, things are laid out at least a few months ahead in terms of the major tournaments and the ones that we go to every year. But the situation is a little bit fluid as well. You have to take it as it comes and be prepared to, go to an event next month that you'd not planned to or whatever else. So yeah, things do change. And amongst that, you have those kind of few set dates every year, like whether it's, Canary Wharf or TOC or British Open, whatever it is. In and around that, it's a little bit more flexible and changes. So you can plan for a few months ahead training wise, but that's kind of about as far as it goes, really.
And quick prediction here on this US Open tournament. Who do you think is going to take it?
Oh, for me, I would go with either Ali or Mohammed. I think we're seeing a resurgence from Mohammed at the top of the game again. Obviously, he's just won in San Francisco a few days ago. And Ali obviously won out in the Pyramids last week, again showing that he's back on top. So I think those two guys are probably the two to beat in world squash at the moment. But I think that's changing constantly, which is great for the sport now. That it's not as that it's very open at the top of the game, isn't it?
And do you usually watch along tournaments and follow along when you're not playing them, or do you just kind of just listen to the background noise of it?
Yeah, bits and bobs. I don't watch everything, but I'll keep a sort of a close-ish eye on what's going on, and if there's people that I particularly like watching or, friends that I'm supporting, then of course I'll tune in for the matches. But yeah, I like to have a rough idea of what's going on.
Yeah. And then to follow up on that, is there which player do you really like watching playing?
I like watching Ali. I like watching Ali play. He's probably one of my favorite players to watch. Makes the game look a lot easier than it is. But all of these top guys are great to watch because you can just learn. They're all very different, right? So there's a lot to pick out and a lot to learn from watching these guys. And I'm a squash fan as well at the end of the day. It's been a big part of my life. So, of course, I'm a casual fan as well, just like everyone else.
Yeah, so speaking of, I just wanted to get your take and how you feel about the current state of the men's tour. Because, it's pretty clear to me that you're an advocate of the clean squash brand, but these past year or two has, the lines have gotten fishy, and definitely the tour on both the men's and women's side have gotten a lot more feisty than back in the day. So I just wanted to hear what your thoughts were on it. I
think it's not good. I don't think it's good at all. I've been raised and brought up a certain way, and I try to play the game with respect and respect for my opponents and the referee. It's hard at times in the heat of battle. We know how hard it is when the heart rate's at 190 and maybe a decision doesn't go your way, but we have a responsibility to the sport, to the wider audience in general, as to how the game is portrayed and the behaviours of certain players, not all players, for me is not acceptable. And I believe that those in charge need to crack down on that kind of thing. There was a few instances that I plugged in.
What do you think? What do you think it is? Like a lack of consequence of like certain behaviors. Like, what do you think is allowing this to grow these past couple of years?
Well, I suppose there's a few reasons for that. I think squash, as far as I'm aware, is one of the only sports where dialogue between player and referee is so openly accepted. If you take sports like in the fight game, in rugby, referees are addressed with a huge amount of respect, and if there's any back chat, it's pretty much you're out of there. So I would like to see those in charge crack down on the amount of interactions between player and referee. I would like to see some of the movements that we see, the blocking, the trailing legs. I would like to see a zero tolerance policy on that as soon as it comes in. Squash is a very ambiguous sport, so it's hard to be black and white with refereeing. That's the bottom line. It's very hard. It's unlike a lot of other sports with the close contact, with the variables, with the movements. But I would like to see a bigger crackdown on, on blocking and the sort, because really the tour loses and the sport loses because, as far as I can tell, the supporters and the fans and the people watching don't really want to see that, and it's it doesn't make the sport look good. I'm not really sure who benefits from that, but I'd like to see a stricter directive given to the referees to clamp down on that kind of behaviour. As a player, we know those players that test the boundaries a lot more than others, and then they're not fun to play against. If you see yourself coming up against certain people.
Does that type of behavior get into your head?
Yeah, not me personally, because I could consider myself to be a level-headed individual, and I think I keep a cool mind on the court. I think it's one of my stronger suits. I've got weaknesses, of course, but it doesn't affect me. But I do see that it affects other players, and ultimately, it's just.
I think I'd get affected. Yeah, I'd get affected and start like stripping down to that level as well if I hear someone start rambling on.
So what's
I don't know how you keep a level head.
What do you think about what you've just asked me, though, in terms of the state of the sport at the moment with the refereeing? Well, not the refereeing, but the behaviour of the players. What's your opinion on how things are?
Well, I had an interesting conversation in a couple episodes back with Timmy Brownell, the player from the U.S., and he was just saying that it's hard to, play it cleanly, because once a player takes it to the other side, it seems the pattern is they're able to win the match. So it's like you need to level the playing field by replicating some sort of behavior like that, and it's hard to win a match when you're at a similar level. And one player has decided to, start blocking, start, getting into the mind games and head games. And he was saying it's very difficult as a player when you're trying to advocate for clean squash. But I do think one part I do think it does is it sparks a lot of conversation. And I think any conversation, whether it's good or bad, does help the sport. Because I mean, even us talking about this, I think is helpful. And I don't think maybe it is good for the sport, but I don't know. I have mixed bag feelings about it, because I do think so much is allowed to happen. And as not a professional player, I get confused now. And I've never been confused watching squash back in the day of what is right or what is wrong. But nowadays I'm so confused because the lines get blurry. you can literally make up lets and strokes as we go along now. It seems like in the pro level and like the level you guys are playing at. And that's really never been seen before in the past.
For me, the thing is, when you look at some of the guys at the top there, your Ali Farags and your Paul Coles, they play the game, you know, as I tried to play it, in terms of with respect, and they're hard fighters, very hard fighters, but they never cross the line as far as I can see in terms of the movement, in terms of trying to get away with the doubles or whatever it is. So if these guys can be at the world number one position playing in that fashion, that means that there's no reason why everyone else can't. And when I see these guys trying to use the aggressive movements and getting the elbows out and whatever it is, I kind of just think, well, you can't be all that secure in your own game and your own mentality if you feel like you need to go to that side of things, you know?
That's a good way to put it.
So
it's tough. I feel like, I don't know if you follow another World Juniors, but I feel like every year it gets a bit dirtier and dirtier every year.
I didn't, I must admit, I didn't plug into that, so I couldn't sort of pass comments on that one.
And so, yeah, that's what I got out of it. But I do want to go back to you on this, but so I know, Declan, these past couple of years have been a rough road for you physically, and it seems like you've been dealing with some injuries, even though you don't really go out of your way to let the public know what you've been going through. And just wanted to hear how these past 2 years have been in general. And I know with the pressure, I'm sure, with the squash community put on you when you were at the England #1 spot. So if you could just tell us a bit about how these past couple of years have been.
Yeah, it's been a tough couple of years, but that's part of the journey. I mean, things don't go, you know, life is not fair. Life's tough, and it's not always going to go in a linear curve. You know, things are going to flatten off at times. So during the COVID times, I struggled personally with the enjoyment of the sport because, you know, the restrictions were what they were, especially having no crowds and going away and you know, being in a very solitary environment. The other players dealt with that a lot better than I did. You know, there's no doubt about it. I struggled, and for me, if I'm not enjoying my squash, it's very hard to extract my best level. So, you know, and the enjoyment is a conscious effort, and I try to enjoy it as much as I possibly can. But it was hard in that time, and you know, the motivation to train it never wanes. I'm in the gym, you know, 6 days a week. You know, like clockwork. I enjoy training. I always have, and I enjoy playing the sport. And for the most part, I enjoy traveling. And when that kind of enjoyment was taken away, that made it tough. And you know, and then there's obviously been a couple of injury problems that I've had. So you know, I was struggling a lot with my back towards the end of last year. In 2021, just towards the end there, I was struggling with a condition, a back condition that I've had for the majority of my life. It's not something I've ever really spoken about in the wider public.
The first time I'm hearing about it,
yeah. So yeah, it's not something that I really talk about. So I have a condition called scoliosis, which is a curvature in the spine. It's not uncommon amongst athletes. You know, I think Usain Bolt actually had the same issue. So, but it's quite a severe curve that I have. I was advised as a sort of late teenager, 18, 19, I was advised by several surgeons to have it operated on when I was younger, which would have almost certainly ended my career before it even really started. So that's something that I live with, but it's obviously not serious enough that it prevents me from being able to train and play. But it does create other issues in my body where things have to compensate and play catch up. So that's just something that I deal with every day, and very diligent with the physios and my strength trainer and the team around me. So the back's just something that I live with, and it's great at the moment. Everything's honestly fantastic, so I couldn't be happier. But there've obviously been times over the years where it's not been so good. So I struggled with that a lot towards the end of the year, which really impacted my movement and my ability to get the most out of myself. And then I kind of felt sort of early on this year, I was really starting to find some form again and enjoy it. Going into the spring period, sort of February, March, April, I was starting to find a bit of a groove again. And then unfortunately, I tore my quad in late April. So I actually sustained a 3-inch tear to the rectus femoris, which is the main quadricep muscle that goes from the knee up to the hip, and it flexes the hip. And I also caught some of the ligaments there in the hip. So by all accounts, from what my doctors and my physios have told me, is that I kind of actually got away with that in a big way. I was pretty much right on the cusp of being out of the game for 9 months. So, they were 50-50 about whether or not I was going to be able to make Birmingham this year. In my head, it was never a question. It was never a doubt. That's just the way that I am. But yeah, I've had some. So I've had some pretty tough setbacks in the last couple of years. But so has everyone else. Everyone's had their problems to deal with. There's, as we know, people like Gawad. He's obviously struggling, and Abu Elgar's been away for a long time. So everyone has to. Everyone has to struggle with their injuries. That's not me getting the violin out or anything. Everyone at some point in their career has these things to overcome. So that's part and parcel of the life that we've chosen. Squash is a brutal sport on the body, as you know as well as I do. It's such a tough, such a tough sport on the body, especially in the generation that we live in now, because I feel that the game is as physical as it's ever been, really, with the guys at the top there.
Yeah, well, I kind of wanted to talk to you about that, about the changes in the game. I know we alluded to it earlier about just the different aspect of it, but like, just wanted to hear about, when do you think this transition happened of like, the game has gotten a lot more physical, and what do you think happened from, do you think it's just an era of different players and their styles that they bring upon?
Again, I think there's probably a couple of explanations. I mean, we've had the passing of a generation, or we've had a generational change, haven't we, in the last 5 years, in terms of your Ramis and your Greg Gaultiers, your Nick Matthews, Shabs, all of these players. There was a changing of the guard. They obviously played their certain way. They played an incredibly high level of squash, very clever, some of the best players in the history, right? So they had their way of playing, and so the game obviously then adapts around that when they were the kings up there for 10 years. And in the last 5 years, you've had the rise of your Paul Coles and your Joel Makins that have introduced a new level of physicality into the top of the game. So then your players like Ali and Mohammed and Tarek, from what I can see, have maybe had to adapt to the brand of physicality, really, that they've brought this overt physicality into the game that everyone's had to respond to in their own way. So different generation of players, a couple of the fittest guys that the game's ever seen are now in the top 10. So all of these things have a bit of an impact into the type of squash that we see on the tour at the moment.
And do you think your training also has changed the past couple of years, just in terms of how much more physical preparation goes into it?
My training's definitely changed in terms of what it's. I train probably in a smarter way than I used to. In the early part of my career, it was just volume, and we probably did too much at times. It was literally just ridiculous. Some of the weeks that we were putting in, and not necessarily the healthiest at times, because you'd get to a Friday and you'd literally just be in a hole, and you'd just be literally carrying yourself through the weekend. I think one thing that I pick up on is that people just don't realize how hard that the training is. At the top level, they just don't understand what goes into getting to any kind of level on the world tour. So yeah, my training's definitely been adapted it's definitely been adapted to what my body can and can't do, and picking and choosing the moments to go to the well and to dig in and have those sessions where you go to the well, as we would describe it. So, but all for the to the positive side, really. I feel in the best shape that I've ever been in my career, and feel very positive about what the future has to offer.
Oh, that's fucking exciting. Yeah. I mean, you're already on a tear right now. I kind of want to go back to the enjoyment aspect of it. I know you said during the COVID you weren't enjoying squash as much. Is that something you dealt with throughout your career, up and down? Was that the first time you actually felt it?
No, I've dealt with it up and down throughout my career. I've always had little patches every couple of years where I've kind of fallen out of love. It's a rigorous lifestyle. It's an unbelievable lifestyle, but it's tough because again, the sacrifice isn't quite understood maybe so much, because people see the good side of things when you're on the TV and playing at these iconic venues, traveling to all these countries. But then what's maybe not seen is the time away from family and the hours of pain in the gym and the kind of self-doubt and the highs and the lows, everything else that goes with it that people don't see. It takes a toll on you. And if you're so obsessed with one thing and you haven't got anything else going on, that can sometimes, if you feel like your happiness or contentment depends on the results or the performances, that creates a very pressurized environment, which can really lead to a lack of enjoyment. Of course, everyone's different. Some people need that laser focus to be thinking about nothing else. I'm someone that's a more relaxed character, and I need to have other interests in my life and other things to do away from the sport, where I can just put the sport away for 4 days if needs be, and go and see my friends and family, go for that walk in the park, go for that coffee, whatever it is. So it's just a case of working out, learning about yourself, and working out, as to what makes you tick as a person. But make no mistake, it's tough to commit yourself to the training week in, week out, and to do the traveling and to handle the wins and the losses. It's an amazing position we're in, but it takes a lot out of you.
Mm-hmm. Well, talking about pressure, I was going to ask you this about, do you think there's an unnecessary amount of pressure, or someone could say a unique pressure that comes with England squash that puts on you guys, considering the wealth of history behind the past successes? So I do think, personally, I think there's a lot more than other countries.
I must admit, I've never felt that from England squash.
Mm-hmm.
The pressures that I've struggled with in my career have been the ones that I've put on myself. I've got a tremendous team around me, and my experiences with England squash over the years have only ever been positive. The coaching setup is second to none, the support second to none. I think maybe it's more the wider audience in general that expect a lot. I think maybe the English people, who are avid squash fans, very knowledgeable, and the UK and the British squash fans, I should say, they're very knowledgeable and they love the game. And maybe they do put a lot of pressure on the players. But, we must remember that we're coming off the back of one of the greatest generations of all time, and a Nick Matthew and a James Woolstrop and a Pete Barker and a Darryl Selby and Adrian Grant. You're talking 5-6 players that are in the top 10 in the world at one point. One point all at the same time. It's kind of, I suppose, the position that Egypt is in now. But we've seen this in the history of the game with the Pakistani reign, with the Australian reign, with the English reign, now with the Egyptian reign. It's nothing that we haven't seen in history already. There's been a pattern there. So England squash have been amazing with me. The times that I've been fortunate enough to represent England at the major championships have been, the best memories of my squash career, and they've been incredibly supportive of me, especially in the last couple of years when I've had that drop, when my level and my performances haven't been what I expect of myself. They've been incredibly supportive. So yeah, never really felt any pressure from them in particular.
So I've noticed you give a lot of credit to Nick Matthew for believing and sticking with you these past couple of years, and I'm confused. I've never heard the story behind how this partnership happened. I feel like it just sprung out of nowhere for people that I didn't even really know you worked with Nick Matthew. I think told like a year. I just want to hear, how did this partnership happen, and how it has changed your game, and just to have him on your team.
Yeah, so I worked with a coach called Phil Whitlock. Emily Whitlock, the female player, her dad, from the age of 18 to around about 26 or so. So he was my first full-time coach, and he was, fantastic, a great influence on me, and really helped me to mature my game and get me to the level that I got to. And I think all good things come to an end, and sometimes you need a little bit of change. And I kind of felt that I just needed some extra things in my game if I was to, make a jump. So that relationship came to an end, and Nick had recently retired about 6 months or a year previously. And, I had been struggling with enjoyment and with that kind of thing around that time. And I kind of just went over to Sheffield. I was fortunate enough to train with Nick from the age of 17 or 18. He would allow me to go into Hallamshire and train when he was, at the very top of the game. So I was learning from him from a young age, and on the England training squads and all the rest of it. And I just
so you had a kind of a relationship.
Yeah, we'd had a relationship, but I sort of, asked him to lunch one day, and I just sort of said, I'm kind of struggling, would you be prepared to help me? And he already had a million things going on, as Nick always does. He's a busy guy. But he came back to me a few days later and he said, let's do it. So so that was fantastic to have the support of someone like him. And it's been a great relationship, even through those tough times that I had in the last couple of years, even though the results and the performances weren't there, I actually felt like I was improving considerably as a player in terms of the things that I can do on the court and the awareness of what's going on. I kind of felt like it was all going in the right direction, and a lot of that was down to Nick. So I never lost faith in him or what he was telling me, and likewise when I wasn't producing the results, he never once lost faith in me. He was probably far more positive than even he should have been towards me at times, because there were times when it just wasn't good enough, the performance. So there was never any sense of a negative comment that came from him. You hear some, not great stories about words that coaches have had with their players, in recent years. Yeah. And I, that kind of nonsense is not something that I would be involved with. So he's been fantastic. He's been a great influence, and long may our relationship continues. So everything's going in the right direction. I'm enjoying it. I feel in a good place as a player, and we'll see what the future brings.
Yeah, speaking of now, I know it seems like a very positive start for you. Do you have goals set for this season that you want to achieve? Where's your headspace at right now?
To be quite honest with you, Sean, the main goal has already been met. I have to be honest with you in terms of Birmingham. It was a life-changing moment for me personally. So whatever happens for this season, and indeed for the rest of my career, I consider to be a little bit of a bonus. I'm hungry to achieve more.
It's a good feeling.
It's the best feeling in the world. I can't describe it. It's unbelievable. Whatever happens going forwards, I'm hungrier than I've ever been to train hard and to achieve and to get results and to be back towards the top of the game. But I can do it now in more of a pressure-free environment, because I did put a lot of pressure on myself my whole career to reach the top. And, that can that has its consequences from time to time. So I'm just enjoying being back out there. That first month on tour last month was the first season for a few years where I've just been excited to get on the plane and go to these countries and come back and at home for a day and going again, but just loving it, just enjoying being on court, enjoying being in these places. And, it's just, I'm just grateful that I have that kind of attitude back in terms of really considering myself so fortunate to be playing sport for a living.
And it helps when, the crowd is full, like the Nantes one. That was insane.
Those guys are kind of just, they're just showing us what the sport can be. It's the rest of the tour and the people in charge, of the sport. They really need to be paying a close eye to what Nantes are doing. They need to be there with the pen and paper, and then going to the other organisers and promoters of tournaments and saying, you better have a look at what Nantes are doing, because, if I was a tournament organiser right now, I would be ringing the guys in Nantes and saying, please tell me how you're doing it. Can I come and have a meeting with you? Because from the marketing to the organisation of the event and the way they're getting the crowds in from round one to the venues that they're using, the production of everything with the entertainment, it's unlike anything aside from the Commonwealth Games. It's unlike anything that I've experienced squash-wise in terms of an atmosphere. You've got the first round, 1,000 people there. It's unbelievable what they're doing, and have been doing now for a number of years. So it's not like they've come from nowhere. They've been doing this, Sean, for a number of years. Yeah. And it's a bittersweet thing, because it's unbelievable when you experience that, but it's very much a one-off experience on the World Tour to experience something like you do when you go to Nantes. And it just frustrates you in a way, because it's like, why can't a number of the other events be like this? Because if they were, the appeal of squash would go through the roof, because at the moment it's not good enough. The sport is not in a good enough position. The numbers, the prize money, the people watching, it's not going in the right direction, in my humble opinion. Some people might disagree with that, but as far as I can see, the sport isn't in an amazing shape overall, and I don't think it has been for a number of years. And we need people to come in and shake it up and see how good it can be, because it can really be something special.
I mean, just to see even that event, and then right after was the Egyptian Open, the crowd difference. I mean, it's a platinum tournament. It's a shocker to see. It's like one tournament's supposed to be as equivalent of a Grand Slam, and the other one's just a. It's not.
You're going from 1,000 people screaming, banging their feet on the stands, high level of squash being played, the guys killing each other, to a week later seeing a floor where the lines don't work, where the sand on the court, where it's unplayable because the floor's too slippy, and then you've just got people elbowing each other and blocking. And I'm just thinking, what are we doing here, guys? The sport, what are we doing? It just looks terrible at times. And the week before, you'd be shouting from the rooftop saying, look how amazing this product that we've got is. So it's like two ends of the spectrum. And to me, that's not good enough. The level, the standard of the events, it has to be higher.
Completely agree with that. And it's tough. It's tough to say. And hopefully, as you say, other tournament organizations are taking notes.
What do you think the sport can do to increase that participation, to make it more interesting to watch, to get the crowds in bigger numbers?
I think the big lack of, I don't want to blame it too much, because we're still I think we're still recovering from the COVID period, and organizations are getting back on the feet. And I do want to give credit to Egypt for putting up these events for you guys to have that prize money. But
that was fantastic.
It's just like diversity of different countries. Diversity of different countries to host events. Like I know that New Zealand's going to be hosting an event, but like I know back in the day we had the Australian Open. We also had the Hong Kong Open. I don't know if that's back in the calendar, but having, you never know which country is going to have those crowd. And then once you have that data point of, okay, we know that, location A has a good crowd, successful tournament, and we just replicate that on and on, instead of, it's tough because right now I still feel like we're gearing towards who does have the financials to give you guys the money, give you guys the right payout. And it doesn't matter if there's, one person showing up in the crowd, as long as the payout is up to standard with a platinum event, they have to continue that. And it's tough to see because on the fan perspective, as much as we care about you guys getting paid as a professional athlete, like all we're seeing is the visuals of it. And the visuals, especially for the Egyptian Open, was atrocious, as you were mentioning the lines. And even the whole idea of a glass floor, it does not look good to me. I think the wood has a beautiful aesthetic to it. I don't know why they're not investing in other technologies, such as, why don't we invest more in the outlines? Why don't they beep on the outline if the ball hits the out? That blows my mind that we still don't have the technology to determine exactly if the ball is out or not, or double bounces. So stuff like that. I feel like we're not investing in the. Yeah,
it's things like production as well, right? So you go to Nantes and you'll see the entertainment, the music and the dance show in between, and there's a whole host of other stuff going off on court. And then you go to an iconic venue like the Pyramids, one of the most iconic locations in the world. Why is there not a drone flying around taking aerial shots and getting aerial footage of the court with the pyramid in the backdrop so that we can create more interesting content? Why are we not doing so many more things for the production, like the use of music when the players come onto court, the way that the lights are used? We need to be looking at sports like boxing and things like that look amazing on television, whereby there are so much is put in towards the entrance of the players, for example, with the music, with the lighting, everything's built up to a bit of a crescendo. Why are we not looking at it from a production point of view to make that product even more appealing than it already is? A lot of the feedback that I get from people who aren't as familiar with the sport is that it's too hard to follow along what's going on because it's very subtle. The game's full of subtleties and it's very clever, and to the trained eye, to the squash fan, they obviously know what's going on and they can appreciate it, but it's a little bit harder for the person who hasn't seen squash before to understand exactly what's going on. So what compensates for that in Nantes is the theatricality and the drama of everything, the lighting, the shows in between, the emceeing work from Remain. All of that helps to create a bit of a picture of what's going on. And unfortunately, with the other events, we don't quite see that. So sometimes it's literally just straight into the game and that's all we see. And the problem is, if that product on that particular night isn't up to scratch because the players aren't having their best night, or someone is throwing the back leg out left, right and centre, then the audience is going to come away from that feeling like they've not got value for money. And at the end of the day, yes, we're a sport, but we're also a business, and we need commercial minds to look at it in kind.
Oh, that's a great point. I mean, you just got me thinking. I don't know if you saw it, but the MC for the Egyptian Open was so bad.
I didn't see.
The questions he was asked, I mean, yeah, it was compared to the one in Nantes, it was atrocious, but it's obvious that you've given this a lot of thought. Do the PSA as an organization ask you guys a lot for your input, or not really?
I've been asked for my input on multiple occasions because of comments that I've made in articles and podcasts, whatever it is, interviews. I'm always happy to sit down and discuss the ways in which we can improve, because I think there are many. So I've voiced these opinions. I can't really speak as to whether or not they've been taken on board and reacted to. I can't speak to that. But I'm just speaking from what I see, and hopefully from a point of common sense. I'm someone that loves sport. I watch a lot of sport, and I see how these other sports that are on the TV in the mainstream are doing it. And I kind of feel like we've got lessons to learn from the way that other sports are going about their business. But the problem is, there's no reason why I can't be doing that. That's what I find frustrating. I know money is probably the bottom line with a lot of these issues that we're talking about, Sean, but if the sport's going to survive and grow and become what it can be, we're going to have to invest into the production and the running of events.
Yeah, hopefully, this sparks some fire. That's the goal. But I'm gonna transition into the quickfire segment now. And to start this off, we're going to do this thing where we build the perfect player. And you can only use active players. And I say this to everyone. There's absolutely no shame in choosing yourself for any of these questions. Let's start this off.
Has anyone done that?
I don't think anyone has. This is a pretty recent one, and I think a lot of the players I've had are a little too humble so far. Hopefully that might change today. But let's start this off with the best forehand in the game right now, you think?
I'd probably have to say Sal.
Just you think it's the sheer power you can generate off that side? Yeah. How about best backhand?
I am going to say Diego.
Really? Could you explain why? Is it the subtleties?
The subtleties, yeah, and the wrist power. Obviously, he takes the ball into the front left a lot, but then from the front left, he's obviously got that straight drop or the cross-court flick. He can generate a lot of power on that side, a lot of deception as well. Yeah,
you've had some brutal battles with him.
We've had some TOC one. He gave me a bit of a lesson in Egypt a couple of weeks ago, but we have had some good ones over the years.
How about best movement?
Paul Cole.
See, I think this is the one that's a split with a lot of people. Either they choose Farag or the likes of Macon or Cole.
Yeah, I would be between Paul and Ali as well.
So different, but
they are completely different. Ali's movement is beautiful. It is beautiful. He's probably if you were, designing a perfect squash player that you wanted someone to play like and move like, you'd probably describe Ali Farag. But I think Paul, he has that massively explosive side as well.
And how about lastly, best mental game?
Best mental game, Mohamed El-Shibagi.
Could you expand a little bit why you chose him?
What he's achieved already, and he's obviously had that lapse in the last couple of years, similar to the way that I have, but on a much higher level. And I think his ability to have got himself, it looked like he was kind of on the precipice there of really, can he come back to a good level? And it seems, transformed himself back into a top 2 and 3 player in the world. So, the mental prowess required to achieve that is admirable. And he's obviously at 45, 46 titles now, and that duration of time at number 1 is, the mental fortitude required to achieve these things is not to be underestimated.
Yeah, I'm definitely one of those guys who wrote him off publicly and is looking like a fool right now with his performance.
Yeah.
So, not the greatest look on my end, but I mean, I guess there you have it. You got the Declan's perfect player. And just now moving on to the classic segment. This is just going to be a bunch of questions for you that are squash related to start it off. First one is, who do you think is the best ref on tour?
John Massarella.
Do you think it's just his experience?
Experience, and he's got a very good ability to read the ball and to read the play and read the situation as well. We see, I don't want to get in trouble, but we see a bit of a lack of common sense at times. There's a lot of a lack of common sense from the players, and there's a lot of stuff that the players do wrong. Don't get me wrong, but from the refereeing side, sometimes the common sense outcome isn't always reached. The game is ambiguous, as we've said, and sometimes it's just a let. We don't need to overcomplicate things and try and leave a mark on the match. Sometimes a let's just a let.
And best dressed player on tour?
Oh, close to saying myself for that one.
I had a feeling you might pick yourself up.
There's some questionable dress senses on tour, let me tell you.
Oh, wait, you're going to love the next question then, because I am going to follow up something.
But I suppose...
Who do you think is the worst dressed?
The worst dressed? Oh, Miguel's not a great dresser, is he? I don't think Miguel's a great dresser. Miguel's not a great dresser, is he?
You don't like the color combos?
Sorry, mate. I think he's a great guy, but
do you have any others in mind? It seems like you had a bunch of names in mind for the worst dress.
Oh, not too many. Not too many. It's just a general theme. I'd like to see a little bit more aesthetic and a little bit more thought into playing kits and all this kind of stuff. Because it's a bit mad.
And wait, sorry, I know you skipped out. Who do you think is the best dress other than you? Because we already know that you're definitely up there on the best dress scale.
Who's up there? Who is up there? I think Ali. Ali's up there. I think he's a smart guy. Paul and Joel. Their kits are always very good.
Okay.
Yeah. Their kits are always.
That's funny you said Ali because Ollie's been mentioned a couple times as worst dressed.
Worst dressed?
Yeah.
Are we going on court or off court clothing here for this dress sense?
I think on court.
Right.
I think the whole polo locked up to the front has been mentioned. Yeah, that's maybe not the best.
Ika's a good dresser off court from what I've seen. I think he's got a good dress sense as well.
Okay. Yeah. All right. And who would you like to see in the commentators booth in the squash community?
George Parker. I think he would be incredible. If he was himself, he'll be incredibly entertaining.
I really would hope.
We need to get George and Pat Rooney. We need to.
Pat Rooney's name has been mentioned multiple times on this.
We need to get George. Those two together are an absolute comedy double act. Honestly, they're two of my closest mates on the tour, and they are hilarious. And for whatever reason, when they get together, they're just carnage. So yeah, they would be like the new Joey and PJ.
That would be lovely. I know you're not unfamiliar with the doubles, considering you just won the gold. But other than Willstrop, who would you want to play with as your partner, whether it be on the mixed side or on the men's side? Who's one player that you'd like to play with?
It's tough, isn't it? Because with the doubles, you can get the best two players on paper, put them together, and they could be useless. The doubles it's about so much more than how good an individual player is. I mean, Daryl has come out of retirement for the last year, and he's come into the doubles and picked up and got to the final. So it just shows. I think looking into the setup now, if James has called it, and I can't manage to drag him out for the next Commonwealths in 4 years, then I'd probably look at practicing with Adrian Waller again. He's obviously got that massive forehand, and his pedigree at doubles is second to none. And it'll be interesting to see if Mo's got an appetite for the doubles as well, because although he's never played, if he puts a couple of years in of practice, then his forehand could be formidable. Yeah.
As someone who's not familiar with the doubles game, how do you become a good doubles player? What is the biggest difference you think in the singles game and the doubles game? Because you do see a lot of active players who do back and forth.
There's a massive aspect of ability to play in a team. So all the things that requires, i.e. communication and reading what your teammate is going to do or not do. So you have to have a good relationship with your teammate. You have to get on very well with them, be able to communicate and be honest and open with them. And you have to have game styles that complement each other. So if you've got two players that are both very attacking, that's not necessarily the blend that you need for doubles. With the successful partnerships in doubles historically, you've seen one maybe more attacking player and one more of a containing player. So, Jimbo is more of an attacking player. He has more attacking options on his forehand there, typically, than I do on my backhand. So throughout our partnership over the last 5-6 years, I've played a containing role. down the backhand side, and he's been a little bit more open and creative. And
That's interesting, yeah.
Adrian has very much taken on that attacking role, and Daryl's played the containing role on the right side. So, with the partnerships, you see they balance each other out. So often, if you have someone that is can absorb and contain and create opportunities, and another person that's very good at attacking and taking the ball in, that often leads to a good partnership.
Oh, that's always learn something new about the doubles. I don't know too much about it. Declan, would you consider coaching post-career, or is that not a thing for you?
Not personally. Never say never, of course. I've done little bits in the past, in the off-season with the camps and whatever else, but I'm a big believer in experiencing other things in life. Squash has been the main driving force in my life for, well over 20 years at this point. And I'd love to experience different things in life. I'd love to go down different avenues, different industries. So I'm hoping that after my squash career is finished, I'll go into another career path. I'm sure I'll keep my ear to the ground with what's going on, and I'd be open to mentoring, and maybe if someone wanted a little bit of help with something, maybe I could pass down a bit of experience if that's worthwhile to someone. But I would like to experience different paths in my life after squash.
And some feisty ones. Most underrated player on tour, you think?
Most underrated player on tour. A couple of the English guys. George, I think, is still I think we're still yet to see George's potential with his physicality and his movement. I think we're still yet to see him. There's a player a little bit lower down, Curtis Malik, who I've played a few times now. I think he's got a lot of potential. I maybe would have said someone like a Victor Cruan a couple of months ago, but he's obviously now fulfilling that potential, as we can see. Unbelievable. I think a couple of the other French boys will come through and follow suit there as well. I think the majority of the Egyptian guys that we see at the top of the game are fulfilling their potential. So there aren't too many that stick out as underrated at the moment.
Okay, and then how about, who do you think is the most overrated player on tour?
Oh, going to get in trouble for a few of these, aren't I?
That's the name.
If I have to pick a name out of the top 10 or 12, I don't see Mazen Hesham as a 7 or 8 in the world player, if I'm being honest.
Declan, just huge thank you for answering that question. We've had a huge streak right now where guests have refused to answer that question, so you definitely just broke that streak.
I'm not bothered about rustling feathers. Nothing personal against any of these people that we're speaking about. I don't know them and have personal relationships with them, but I'm an honest guy. I speak my truth. So
Oh, it's incredible. And I always ask this if they don't answer it, but who's one player that you dislike playing, just like clashing on with your playing style?
Asal, obviously. Asal, it's just you just know that you're going in to not play a game of squash, so it becomes a little bit like, how much do you fancy a street fight on that particular day? I can sort of contrast that, for example, with playing a Gawad or an Ali Farag or a James Willstrop, where it's going to be purely squash.
Yeah,
nothing else, just artistry. And I'm playing these guys that I'm almost kind of just in awe and waiting to see what they're going to do, and just trying to make it competitive myself and trying to win, but just enjoying what they're doing as well. And really, those occasions are just like, oh, this is fantastic. And then you'll play some of these other jokers that are just want to block you out or whatever else, and it's like, why am I doing this? Do you know what I mean? So
yeah.
It is what it is, but that's part and parcel of sport. That's life, and we have to get on with it.
Fair enough. And no longer some squash ones, but just to get to know you better, some life questions. Declan, if you're shipwrecked on an island, all your basics are covered, what are the 2 things you bring with you?
2 things. A book And basics are covered. So like a knife, would a knife be, that would be my basics? Are we talking, so we're talking like luxuries?
Yeah. Those things, luxuries here.
Probably a book and then something to listen to music with. Yeah, so like
not a complicated person, just the bait. Yeah. And best and worst purchase you've ever made.
Best and worst. Best purchase probably the watch that I'm wearing at the moment, and worst purchase would be any kind of like designer shoes or clothes that I bought when I was like 17, 18, 19 years old, spending like £600 on a pair of trainers to try and look good, when really I should have just been investing that money and being clever, but I just want it to be cool. So that's not really got me that far, has it?
I guess that's investment to yourself and your look. Nothing wrong with that. And on a night out, what's your drink of choice?
Ooh, I do like a Negroni. I do like a margarita, or just a simple rum and coke.
Got it. And lastly, biggest pet peeves for Declan.
Oh, how long have we got, Sean? I dislike people that go back on plans they've made. So if you've made plans for something and then people pull out, I dislike that, because I think it's showing disrespect to the other person's time, and they've blocked that off in their diary. So anything to do with sort of respecting other people's time is a big no-no for me.
Got it. Well, there, I'm going to wrap it up there, folks. Just a huge shout out to Declan for joining in, and excited to see what this season has in store for him. But yeah, thank you, Declan.
Thanks for having me, mate.